Dale has asked me to talk to you about my role as the Director of Staff Development at Mount Albert Grammar School. And I'd like to talk about two particular issues. One is about pedagogy and how you shift staff members in their pedagogy, and secondly, how you promote leadership. So if we look at pedagogy first, I think the big stimulus for a shift in pedagogy amongst teachers that at the same time provided more empowerment by teachers was our interpretation of teaching as inquiry, and it revolves around four key steps. First of all, focus. What is it that you want to focus on? Secondly, process. What are you going to do to address that focus? And thirdly, what evidence you're going to use to inform that whole process. Now, evidence can be taken to mean evidence of student outcomes that have improved, or it can be evidence of teachers' improvement in what they're doing. So you've got a kind of a double component to that. So evidence can be taken in a number of different ways because you've taken on board as a teacher something that's going to improve your outcomes for your students. So the measure might be improvement in the student outcomes, but the evidence can also mean what you as a teacher have done to actually achieve that. And review, I believe that whether your review cycle is a term or 2 terms or a year, it doesn't matter. I believe it's absolutely crucial that people review what they've done from time to time. And of course this year we have introduced into our performance management system a system that engenders review as part of this whole process. So what we do in the school is we have two provided for, in a sense, goals. One is the RTCs, the Registered Teacher Criteria, 12 of them, and we use those exclusively with our beginning teachers, the Year 1 and Year 2 teachers, and they're required to create a FPER chart that asks them to provide evidence of their addressing of each one of those criteria over a 2-year cycle. So they're expected to concentrate on 2 per term, 4 per half year, and then by the end of the first year they should have some evidence for 8 of them, and then they address the other 4 and overlay more of the first 4 in the second year. So by the end of the second year they've got some really solid evidence about how they're doing as a teacher, and of course we've encouraged a very reflective model amongst them so that when they get full registration, by the time they get into their 3rd year, they're actually well embedded in this whole idea of focus, process, evidence, review. The second big way that we address and use it is through the school goals. Our school goals are very similar from year to year, but they come from the strategic direction of the school, and every year we look in goal number 1 at the targets that we set for level 1, 2 and 3 in scholarship. Those targets are written in such a way that first of all heads of faculty, secondly heads of department, and thirdly teachers can all engage with an aspect of those goals to improve outcomes for the students that are sitting in front of them. Even though the goals from last year were measured, this year's group of students are the ones they've got sitting in front of them, so they can start gathering evidence from this year's group sitting in front of them because they're relating to this year's goals. And of course the final accountability for that whole process would be probably in January when we get the external results from the year's work. Goal 2 is a similar target-based goal, and it's based around Year 9 and 10 students, and there are 2 tools to help us with our evidence gathering for that, because Year 9 and 10 was an area that didn't have a large number of external reference points for us to measure achievement with, and so we created our own junior graduation, and it was a way of measuring progress over that Year 9 and 10 journey, keeping in mind that we knew really that the kids had to engage with learning over Year 9 and 10 in order to prepare them for Year 11, 12 and 13. And so the two tools were junior graduation and, of course, eASTL, which we use extensively. And that enables us to profile those students in Term 1, and particularly with reference to those students who are behind, and then we can put strategies in place to improve outcomes for them over the course of that Year 9 and 10 journey. Goal 3 was about Māori and Pacifica achievement and looking at all of the different ways that we as a school across the spectrum, from beginning teachers to heads of department, heads of faculty, senior leaders and so on, what are we doing to improve outcomes for our Māori and Pacifica students. And finally, Goal 4, this year in particular, is our preparation for devices being used by all Year 9s in 2015. And so we knew that that year, that 2014 year, was quite crucial as far as preparing staff for having 30 kids sitting in their English, history, social studies, science class in 2015. And so the model that we introduced was one that provided professional development with an expert that we brought in to work with leaders from a cross-section from all departments, particularly those who are likely to have Year 9s in 2015. But we wanted to provide these people with an opportunity so that they could go back to their departments and then lead their departments in what they'd learned in the PD. And so these sessions operate twice a term, and we have given them release time. So we have 8 in the morning and 8 in the afternoon. There are 16 in total, and these leaders have the intensive PD with the gentlemen that we have employed, and we cover their classes, and then there's an expectation that they go back and share some of what they've learnt with their departments. And so what you're having is a system whereby the leaders have been given the time to think about what a device is going to do in the classroom. They then in turn go back to their departments and lead their departments in the sort of things that apply to their subject areas as far as devices are concerned. And we're halfway through that process at the moment, and it seems to be going very, very well. We also decided that it would be good practice to subsidise access by teachers to devices, and so we've introduced a system where if they bought a device, we would give them a subsidy, because we know that they're going to be firstly preparing themselves for devices in 2015, and secondly in 2015 students are going to have them in their classes. So that was the other component to that. But really the leadership model was the key, because you're always going to have, just like with students, you're going to have some people who are going to resist the notion of changing their pedagogy because they have got 30 kids, all of whom can access any information at any time through the network, compared to those teachers who traditionally might have had all of the content of their lesson up on a PowerPoint or on some notes that they put up on the board. So there's to be a big shift in the pedagogy around, first of all, the learning that students are going to do, and secondly, what teachers are doing to facilitate it, and thirdly, about the leadership of some people in their department to empower those teachers to actually take on board those shifts. And that model was one that we thought about quite carefully, because we wanted to really give them an idea of the potential, but we knew that ultimately the teachers themselves are going to have to get used to the whole notion of what it was going to be like to have students with a device sitting in their class compared to what they're doing this year, where they don't have that situation.